Okay, here we are again with our one-story house in Homestyler. Today's task is going to be pretty simple. I'm going to have you create rendered images. Rendering simply means that you're trying to make a computer graphic or a computer model look photorealistic, so it looks like it's real in real life. And you will see what I mean by this by the time this video ends. You can, for example, you can tell this image here when we switch to the 3D view. Actually, let me just do that now. Make sure you're set to 3D and not orbital, so you're looking in a room. And you can tell that this image is not really realistic, that it was a computer animation or a computer graphic. So the one thing you're going to want to do to start is check your Google Doc in Homestyler and make sure that all of the details that you need for the rooms that you need to render are actually there before you begin. So for example, I have 2 lamps and bedside tables in this bedroom. I have one piece of artwork. I probably should put something else on this wall. Just make sure everything makes sense. I did paint the walls. I have the molding at the top and the bottom. So the top's called crown molding, the bottom's called baseboard. And just make sure you have a good interior design. You want some components that match styles. So, for example, I wouldn't want this whole room with then a bed that looks very much like a kid or toddler bed. It just wouldn't make sense in this room. So just try to make sure everything works well. Okay, so the other thing you're going to want to consider before you actually go ahead with your rendering is to consider the angle that you're looking at the room. I know I've shown you from this perspective so far in this video, but it might make sense to be standing more over this way, looking towards this corner, since there's more interesting stuff going on over there. We have more windows and so on. So before you get going with your renderings, please move this little guy around and see what looks better. I have to say, I think this looks better over here, even though I had already gotten started. It's worth taking the time to make sure that's going to look right. So now I'm going to put that back into the 3D view, and now I'm going to hit this render button. Okay, so hopefully when you hit render, the command windows or command keys will pop up here. I think because I've already done a few renderings in this, it assumes I already know it. In case it doesn't for you, I cut and paste the commands into the Google Doc for this assignment. So you can see here, you can use your arrow keys to adjust where your camera is while you're in the render view. This is so you don't have to go back and move that little guy around so much. It's a lot easier to just use some keys while you're in the render mode. This is an important one too. You can use the Q and the E keys to move the camera up and down vertically. So I'm going to click on my view. Make sure you, yeah. So I'm hitting Q and E. I know it's hard for you to see that, but and it seems to be a little bit laggy. So if it's slow to react, just keep trying. And that's how you do it. Hit Q to raise it up, E to bring it down. If it's not working for you, click in this window. You may have a different command selected already. Now over here, I would say go for speed to start, but once you're happy with the image, maybe you can change the image to quality, and you'll see what I mean by that in a minute. Now, interior lighting. Nature setting would be, it's only set to the sunlight coming in through the room. Now, you may not want that. You might not have enough interior lighting. Or, sorry, you might need to rely on the interior lighting to light the room a little bit more. So I'm going to click on one of these. So let's say warm. You can change what you're looking at out the window here. You can even change the sunlight settings if you would like, and so on. So these are basically your settings. This would be the aspect ratio, which is it tall and skinny. This would be more of a square. This is a 1:1, which is a true square, and so on. This is a little bit like landscape versus portrait. Once you think you have this set up like what you want, I would hit the render button. All right, once you're happy with that, just click that there and you'll see it go into this button here. If you click on this, you can see I already have 2 of these done. I did them from that first corner over here, and then this is from that new corner. You can see over here, I got the camera a little lower. You may want to in your image. move that camera lower. If you look at the Google Doc that I created, I put in here the keys to adjust the camera height in case you forget what that is. And please, like I always say, this document is not updated yet, so please don't look at this from the video. Refer to the actual Google Doc on Classroom. Now, the other thing I want to point out is this isn't ready yet, so don't worry about the fact that it looks really dark. Wait until it is done and it says ready or new here. And now you can say view detail. And this looks a little bit bright out there, but you can see the lights are on. That's what this glow is causing here. You can see a little bit of a warm light on the ceiling. The sunlight looks pretty bright. In fact, it's almost overpowering the room, but you can see they added an exterior image outside of the room. Now, this is sort of grainy looking, and that is because we used the fast setting. I want to show you the difference between fast from the other corner. So that looks similar. You can see some grainy or dotty, like it looks like lots of dots. And this is when I put it on high quality. So you can see the difference. It's a much better image. If you're wondering where that setting is, I'm going to hit return here to get back to my rendering. And that is up here. If you wanted to go fast, or sorry, if you wanted to be a better quality, you would hit this here rather than speed. And I just, standard was even with the one that you just saw. Now, if you want to play with the sun so that it's not quite so bright, that's where you could come in here and maybe turn down the brightness or so on. That's it for rendering this room. Please refer to the Google Doc to make sure that you have all the components that you need. And again, make sure that the images that you are creating make sense. And this is the kind of thing that you might put in a brochure for a house if you were trying to sell it. So think about that when you're creating these images. Please don't be looking mostly at the ceiling or mostly at the floor, and so on. One last thing I want to point out is if you're using one of these interior lighting schemes and you don't have any lamps or man-made lights inside and you're only relying on the sunlight, your room might become very dark inside with the windows overpowering the light. So you may want to add some lamps just to make sure that's not happening. You could add lights on the wall. You could add floor lamps. That's just one thought. Okay, so once you have your 2 rendered images complete, the one thing I want to tell you how to do now is to insert these images to Classroom. So you're going to want to come and see your images. Pick your favorite one of each room, and the standard is going to be the higher quality than the fast. So you can come here and click download, and then you'll see that you'll get an image file if you're using a laptop or a desktop. Also, a Chromebook should put it there. It all depends on how you're doing that. But then once you have this downloaded, you're going to want to go to your Classroom. Hold on a second. Okay, there's no sense in me going to Classroom because I have the teacher view and not the student view. But if you go to your Classroom, there's going to be a button that says Add. You can then click the Add button, and one of the images or one of the options should be to add a file. And now you can click on, you can find this in your Downloads folder or wherever your device stored it. If that doesn't work, for whatever reason, a last resort, rather than hitting download, could be to use the snipping tool or the screenshot tool and save it that way. So to do that, you could do this, right? Use your screen or snipping tool, and now you're going to want to save this somewhere. The reason I want you to save it is because the image quality will tend to be higher, and more importantly, it's an image file that you can use later on if we put this into a portfolio. If you don't save and you just copy and paste, Google Doc doesn't allow you to just hit save later on. So it'll be much easier for you if you actually have these as saved images. All right, so that's how you could turn those into Classroom. That'll just be the 2 images. The last thing I want you to turn into Classroom is get out of your render mode. So you can either hit the X or hit back. So basically get out of rendering and back to the classic view like this. And I would like you to copy the URL. Actually, before you do that, make sure it's listed as public, and that way I can see it. And if by doing this, you're going to be sending me your entire project, and that way I can look at things if need be, and so on. So just copy this whole thing. So you can just highlight it, right click and copy. And then also in Classroom, you can say add, and one of the options to add is a link. And then you can just paste your URL there. Don't forget to save it once you're done. Actually, better yet, as you're working, save it. And that should about wrap things up.